Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Hi, it's Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to episode 28 of Cognitive. Boy, it's been a busy week on the farm, which means I haven't even recorded this until right now, which is Wednesday, May 19th at 4:08 p.m. I've just finished my working day, and I think talking to you all, since I had a short one today, is a really good alternative to just hanging out. Comments are always welcome. I enjoy your responses. You can comment on our blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. Remember, cognitive is C-O-G, the word knit, I-V-E. Or you can go to our group on Ravelry. I try to catch myself up on the Ravelry every few days. You can add yourself to our Cognitive Listeners Map. There's a link to all these things in the show note on Ravelry and on cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. You can go look at my YouTube channel for some flash tips about getting through these tough times. And let's see if there's anything else. You cannot follow me anywhere else because goofy people have hacked me. But you can contact me through Ravelry or through the blog. In the meantime, warm thanks to Cheryl W. for a very kind coffee and a very kind message. Thank you, Cheryl. Just when I begin to question reality, someone like you comes along and says something that makes me think, okay, maybe I'll just keep going. This is pretty worthwhile. I really appreciated it. It is a beautiful thing in this world to have people show acts of kindness to you and also because they're thinking about you. In the meantime, what's on my hooks and needles? You must all be wondering at this point. Well, we finished the Spectrum socks. I don't usually take 5 months to do or 4 months to do a pair of socks, but there's been so much else going on, and they're gorgeous. And I wore them the next day unexpectedly because we had a cold snap, and they're even fun to wear. They're just beautiful. They're from Rock and String Yarn, and she does terrific stripes. Periodically, I'm going to try and scrape aside money for the indie dyers because usually the ones I know, the quality is quite good. I am going to put in a word here. For some of the indie dyers have great prices. I'm a huge Lisa Souza fan for that reason. I think her prices are quite reasonable. In the meantime, that takes me on to say, what do I have in progress? Well, the wild lettuce shawl, haven't touched it. It's stuck. I really need to get to the midpoint. I'm really looking forward to doing it. It's really been a time crunch here. I'm loaded with patients and I'm very tired at night. And a lot of other things have been going on, as you'll see when we get to the blather. Now then, what else? Twin Faces vest, just sitting here in a heap in a bag at my knees. Still gonna mail it. The temperature blanket is pretty caught up. And we're pretty much on a canary yellow binge. We've been in the 70s. Now we're slowly creeping into a binge on caution in the 80s. Having a lot of fun with that. That's in Knit Picks with a kit for their Hue Shift blankets. And I just love it. I'm so grateful for that kit. In the meantime, I started new socks. And because I'm not particularly inventive as a human being, I called them the really pretty socks. These are, speaking of indie dyers, these were a stash dive. And that's a consideration. I've also realized as I'm looking at my yarns, I don't really need to buy new yarns. The really pretty socks, this is from Destination Yarns Passport Fingering in a color called Lotus Lantern Festival. Now I have to say, I think Destination Yarns are outstandingly beautiful. They really are. They're not cheap. But for a pair of socks, I can swing it because I'm going to get the entertainment of knitting and then the joy of wearing for years. And I have to say, I think Destination Yarns has really unique colors, really beautiful colors. I picked up this yarn, I want to say, at Stitches 2020, right before the pandemic kicked off in full swing. Oh, eyeing the Outpost sweater I have in my notes. I'm really not. Now I'm eyeing the basic Ruana, the 3-scarf Ruana from the book The Knit Stitch by Sally Melville. Many of you will recognize this is an oldie but goodie. The Knit Stitch is a fantastic book. I'm not sure if it's even in print, but the whole series that Sally Melville did are superb, and you really should have them, or at least take them out of the library and look at them. I think of them all, the Knit Stitch, which was the first in her series, is the best, because it is nothing but the Knit Stitch, and it's brilliant. It's just brilliant, the amount of clothing she gets by essentially doing garter stitch and knitting in the round. Sweaters, you name it. She doesn't do socks, I think, but she does just about everything else. It's a phenomenal book. And so I've always wanted to make the Ruana from it. And I finally reached a moment where I looked at my stash and said, good Lord, I've got a lot of worsted weight, and went roaming through the Knit Stitch. And I've always been looking at the Einstein jacket, but that takes a bigger yarn, I think. And I just decided, hey, I've got this big wad of worsted. It might be time to get serious about the Ruana I've always wanted. I'm debating right now between a Lisa Souza yarn, which is just, I believe, her worsted weight. I can't remember if it's a BFL or a merino, but it's just beautiful, and I've got it in this beautiful foxglove pink color. I'm not sure I want outerwear in pink. That's the thing that stops me. But I was also looking at the colorway Wales Road in Malabrigo Rios, which I also want as a sweater. And I'm trying not to buy more yarn, so we'll see how this all works out. Anyway, so I'm looking at this 3-scarf Ruana. Why that Ruana? There's a million Ruanas on Ravelry. Cosmic Pluto, whose knitwear patterns I adore, she just came out with a gorgeous Ruana style cover-up. But I'm actually just looking at the basic 3-scarf here because when you make a Ruana, if you look at traditional Ruanas from South America, you see the weakest part of the Ruana is at the center back neck. That's usually where most of the weight is hanging, and it starts to pull sideways. And I love Sally Melville for noticing that. And her solution is make a Ruana with minimal technical details. It's almost completely just 3 straight scarves, knitting garter stitch. But when she gets around the neck area, she does a little tweak and shapes it a little bit, and then puts a 3rd scarf and connects it at the neck. So it's supporting the weight of that weak spot. And that's just a really smart piece of engineering. And I love the 3-scarf Ruana, but boring because, it's just endless garter stitch. 3 scarves in a row, yeah. But I thought, well, this might be the time to make it in the summer. That knitting a scarf means you don't have a big sweater in your lap. And at the same time, it's boring, which is what I cherish in my sweaters. I knit boring sweaters, and I'm proud of it. And at the end of this, you get this really nice 3-season cover-up. If you look at the Ruanas online, you'll see there's a sort of divergence. Some people are using them for spring-fall woolly cover-ups with long-sleeve t-shirts underneath them. Some people are especially crocheting them in open stitches like double crochet or treble crochet, and then they make them in light cottons and use them as a beach cover-up. It's all good, kids. I'm looking at making it in wool for cooler weather. I'm still thinking about the owl post, about doing the first part of the owl post, which is a cabled band that goes all the way around the body at the chest level. Then you pick up stitches at the top and knit the top, and pick up stitches at the bottom and knit the bottom. So I'm thinking about the owl post sweater. I really am, because I just have a beautiful gray and Malabrigo Plomo that I want to make it in. And I'm also looking at that very toothsome Lisa Souza foxglove pink and thinking about sweaters. And I'm looking at some Knit Picks bulky that I've got in a garnet to make just another gorgeous Agnes sweater, because I love the Agnes. No pockets, but otherwise I love it. What am I currently wearing, you ask? Well, we've had cold snaps routinely this week, so you can see a picture of me there. I think it's probably from Monday when I meant to record this, in my good old reliable brick. If you haven't made a brick and you want to make a basic starter sweater, That's one of the great ones. I'd have to say, if you want to work in DK, I'd recommend the Dove coat. That I just love that. The Ducat sweater. You can look through my notes and find that. Meanwhile, Dizzy Blondes, I am running out of control. If you look in the notes, you're going to see pictures of 4 or 5 projects. Yeah. And I'd like to point out one of them, I think my favorite of the lot was I went stash diving and pulled Blueface Lester from Lisa Souza in a colorway called Newtown, which I don't know if she even still makes. I just love it because I grew up near Newtown, Pennsylvania, and the colors of it reminded me so much of that. It's these kind of airy, foamy blue type colors with a little darker blue, and it goes into browns. And I just loved it. I made that up. I was going to chain ply it, but I liked it so much, and I just decided to do a 2-ply because my chain plies have been coming out bulky lately, and I wanted this in more of a sport to worsted weight, anything smaller. So I ended up double plying it. The pictures are in the show notes. Then I went berserk. I finished up the last of the Fat Cat Knits braids. I think I had 3 braids when all this started. Anyway, I did a braid of yellows and browns and also a braid of browns and pinks and whites that were in merino nylon tencel. And then I took a royal hair braid that I cannot remember what it was. Royal hair. It was BFL silk, I believe. Anyway, so I did all those as singles. And I ended up chain plying the brown and yellow Fat Cat knits and came out with a lovely bulky that's probably going to end up as a bandana cowl because it's just screaming to be a bandana cowl, all I can say. And the bandana cowl is one of my tried and true favorites. And anyway, you can find all the links in the show notes, and you can also see that in my Ravelry patterns. But if you have a single skein of bulky, I can't recommend the bandana cowl enough. And I love cowls. I know people who don't wear them. I don't understand that. Where I live in Southern California, a cowl is one of those perfect accessories. I like them because they don't fall off your neck, as opposed to scarves. Anyway, then I ended up double plying the royal hair with part of the Fat Cat knits. The Fat Cat knits braid was 10 ounces. The royal hair, I think, was 4. So I took the remainder of the Fat Cats and plied it against itself. And it came out fantastic. And then I had this insanely beautiful stripe. It was gold and blue with hints of green from Mad Color. And I also singled that and then chain plied it, and it's coming out bulky. So boy, I'm going to have cowls galore this year, and I'll probably give some to charity because I've got an overload of them now. But anyway, you can see pictures of all this, and I just had a blast, and I feel like I'm getting far more competent with my electric eel wheel 6 that by the time I got to the Lisa Souza, I could have probably triple plied that and gotten a worsted weight, but I really wanted to stretch it. Now, I tend to use 2 plies for weaving, and I can't think of any better use for that, Lisa Souza. It just looks like it's screaming to be woven into something. I haven't woven in a while, but I've got my table set up here with a peg for warping, so, that could happen. We'll see. In the meantime, let's get on to a strategy, shall we? Well, here I am thinking I'm done distress tolerance. Aren't I naive? Yes, you're saying softly, you are. But apart from that, how about distress tolerance, Gemma? Okay, and I was talking about the acronyms improve and accepts. And those are, of course, the distraction skills from distress tolerance, but I was overlooking some of my other tried and true favorites that I sort of teach as I go, and I don't often get to focus as much on them. These kind of overlap, in my mind, into the next set of skills. That distress tolerance is one set. The next set is routine emotional management, or we call it emotional management skills. But it's your sort of routine day-to-day stuff. What do I do? And there's this sort of stuff that hangs on the edge that my trainers have usually called part of distress tolerance, okay? So let's talk about these extra things. First of all, when you're talking about managing your distress, I'm focusing on the good stuff. A lot of people do it the bad way. In fact, that's where dialectical behavioral therapy came from, was one clinician who was incredibly gifted looking at those bad copings. Okay, so bad copings include using drugs, using alcohol, addictions, nicotine, weed, in my case, carbohydrates, comfort eating, gambling, self-injury, cutting themselves, spending money. Okay, there's a lot. And you can hear that the bad skills go from what we all can identify as bad skills, like drug abuse, but they sort of go into a lot of habits that people use day to day without thinking, like emotional eating or compulsive playing of bingo, which I knew somebody who did that and actually ended up in therapy. Spending money. I'm going to go out and do some retail therapy. Yeah, as long as you don't overdo it. Okay, so some people use distress tolerance, and we all have those moments where we go, oh, boy, I need a taco. I've had a bad day. Today, I had a bad day. I made a Creo brew with cream for me and my son. The great news, it's keto. One great thing I love about keto, you really can't use it to abuse yourself. It doesn't hurt you. I can sit around and eat keto brownies till the sky falls. Nothing's going to happen. I won't get enough nourishment, but I'm not injuring myself the way I would be if I gave into my addiction of carbs. Okay, so you can hear there's a lot of gray in this area of tolerating distress. And there are definitely days where my husband will say, you're really upset. Why don't you go buy some yarn? But as I've said, I'm going stash diving, I hope, for a long time. And yeah, yarn spending can be one of the things. However, even that has its gray area. Like when I make the Ruana, for example, do I have enough Wales Road to make it? If I don't, buying 2 more skeins, I don't consider that a serious breach of the deal to go stash diving. Again, we all have that rule where you can't buy the yarn to finish a project. So there's gray areas. There's I'm just buying too much yarn versus, no, look, I'm using my yarn really well, but I do need 1 more skein or 2 more skeins to finish. So when you're thinking about distress tolerance, I'm just asking that you remember that when you joke about I'm doing retail therapy, sure, why not? But if you say I'm doing retail therapy for the 6th time this week and I've spent $2,000, unless you're renovating your house, you want to sort of pause and think about that. So one of the ways you can look at distress tolerance before you start practicing the skills is make 2 lists. The first list is going to be about all your coping behaviors. Okay, so write anything you do to cope, anything you can think of. Now, at the top of that list, here's the trick. You're going to write the words ineffective coping. So first you write everything down. Then you write at the top, ineffective coping, and you go, whoops. And so you're going to look at your whole list of your coping skills that you're now saying, well, why am I calling it ineffective coping? Well, you're going to write a second list, and on the top you'll put effective coping. So then you go down that first list, and everything that's ineffective, like using drugs, smoking weed, whatever, you put a star next to. Okay, but now there may be some things, like you say, having a cocktail. And so that one, you're going to do both. If you overdo it, you leave it on the list. If you don't overdo it, like if you say, I drink 1 drink every 2 nights or something, it's not hurting anybody, I do it after the kids are in bed, it's only 1 drink, then you'll write that on effective coping. But effective coping should be within limits. And by the way, let me explain to you that everybody who's alcoholic in my audience, if there's anybody, I kind of doubt it, but, just said, oh, no, I have 4 drinks a night and that's just fine. Okay, look, guys, this isn't therapy. This is a podcast. Remember that thing at the end where I say if you're having a problem, contact a licensed therapist? Yeah, this is only a podcast. So, again, you're going to run into your gray areas. And that's the point of the exercise, is to run into your gray areas, to ask yourself questions about how you cope, okay? And I really think this is just an exercise. And I think it's really nice if you have somebody you love to do it together and sit down and talk about it. If you need a little marital counseling, this is one nice way to do it. Just sit down, talk about your coping skills, and then talk to each other about how you interact. For example, I had a patient whose husband wanted to start up a small business. And when he got stressed, he'd go work on his business. So he would call that a coping skill, and he would call that an effective coping skill, except she felt that she was alone too much, that she wasn't getting enough attention. And he said to her, well, you should get a hobby like I have a hobby. Is that fair? I don't know. But that's something they should be talking about. That would be a good discussion. Like, here's my list of my coping skills. And if you're newly together, it's a good thing to do with your partner. Look at your list. Like, I didn't know you do that to cope. That would be great. I could do that with you. Good moments in coping. Oh, you go biking to cope? I didn't know that. Well, I like biking as long as we don't do too much of it. I'm not built up for it yet. I'm not in shape for it. But I could go biking with you. That's a good moment in couples talking and coping. Here's a bad moment. I drink at night. Really? I drink at night too. Let's drink together. Hey, you know what? Let's see if we can finish 3 bottles of wine. Okay, that's where it's going a little awry. Please use your common sense. I can tell you strategies, guys. I'm not the enforcer. But please try to use your common sense on this. But what I'm saying is, it's actually a pretty good couples discussion to talk about the ways you cope that you think are good, because you may find your partner is willing to join in a healthy way, and suddenly you've got this mutual thing you do together. Okay, so to make this brief, what I'm saying, you make a list of all the ways you cope, and you don't ask a lot of questions, just write them down fast. Then on the top of that list, you put ineffective coping strategies. You make another list that says effective. Then you look at your first list. Everything that's effective, you erase from the ineffective list and write onto the effective list. Everything that's in a gray area, you might write on the ineffective list. If you're doing it badly, you might write how you think you're doing it, like yarn shopping 6 times a week or spent $600. And you might look at that and go, that's too much. We need that money in our family. And so you might instead say, okay, that's on my ineffective list. And then you might write on your ineffective list a way you could do it better. Yarn shopping, I don't know how many dollars a month, $50 a month or $60 a month, whatever. Or yarn shopping when I finish these 3 projects on my UFO list. Okay, so that's it. List 1, list everything, and then take everything off and put it on your effective list. Or look at everything on your list 1 and write the version where you could be effective with it, and look at where you're ineffective with it. And sometimes you're just going to look at something on your ineffective list and go, I need to stop that. Like for me, eating carbs. I need to stop that. I just can't do that. Or emotional eating. And you may say, that's not appropriate. And then on your effective coping, you might say, eating 3 meals a day. Or, 2 meals and 2 snacks, however you do it. Okay, so I know that's kind of a little bit vague as these things go, but what I'm saying is the ineffective and effective coping lists, you make those, and then also you can share them with somebody you love, and you might find mutual things you can do together to support each other. In case anybody's noticing something about the 12-step program, you got it right. Then in 12-step, there's a version of this, and essentially, when you start your ineffective coping, you call your sponsor. Nothing's new under the sun, but this is the DBT version of it. Okay, put a lid on it. Nope. Haven't even tried to cook. I'm up to my ears in work. That's okay. If you want to send me some good recipes, I'm always open. Shoot. Okay, so I've been working on 30 minutes a day and getting pretty much nowhere. I'm not happy with myself. This may take a reward. I've been wanting to buy some trail running shoes, which means a trip down to Roadrunner and a fitting for inserts as well. It's going to be a considerable amount of money. However, we're working through our list of things we have to repair around the house, and I'll get to that in the blather. But I'm looking at this and thinking, yeah, it might be time, because I'm having a hard time getting started, more because I'm really busy and I'm having sleep issues. So one of these days, look for sleep issues under the strategy. Okay. Meanwhile, I've been talking about gear from the bottom up, and I want to get on to shirts. Now, I talked about bras, so I'm not really on that. The issue about shirts is chafing, believe it or not. A lot of people have heavy upper arms for a variety of reasons. Age, working out. If you've really developed your biceps, you might have a problem with it. Okay, so, and just overweight. And look, guys, let's be honest. A lot of us are exercising for weight management. I'd like to point out, as a long-term runner, exercising does not make you lose weight. That's the proven ineffective calorie logic. It doesn't do that. But exercising helps you lose weight in this respect. Exercising makes your body run more efficiently. When your body runs more efficiently, you're burning what you need to burn, and you lose weight. That's where exercise helps, and it helps you run more efficiently by toning you and also by building pulmonary and cardiovascular strength. So there you go. So when you get down to shirting, you're really talking about chafing. And you're talking about chafing in the chest, around the nipples, and you're talking about your arms. And I'm just going to give credit where credit is due. Somebody wrote to me and said, I can't believe you're so lucky you wear short shorts. My thighs rub. And in fact, I'm surprised I didn't get 3,000 letters on that, because that's really common for men and women. Okay, now for men, appropriate support of the goodies helps a lot with that. But I'm just going to pay homage to the fact it's not just your upper body that chafes. Okay, let's put it delicately. The first solution is Vaseline everywhere. Anywhere you're chafing, Vaseline. Okay, that's the cheap, down and dirty solution. However, Vaseline is based on petroleum. Do you want to put petroleum on yourself? Not too much. Sooner or later, that stuff gets into your blood vessels. It goes through your skin. So, Vaseline is the cheap cure. And yeah, it's true. When you're running a marathon, usually somewhere around 10 miles, you'll see people standing out with popsicle sticks smeared with a big gob of Vaseline. They're giving it to us for a reason. People are starting to bleed by that point, depending on where you're chafing. Okay, so Vaseline, down and dirty. Then there's KY jelly. It's water-based. It's not as effective as Vaseline, in my opinion, but it works just fine. And again, how effective is something that you don't want to put it in your bloodstream? Yeah, Vaseline, bit of a problem. So there's KY jelly. There's also a number of sport-specific gels that you can buy at sports shops. I cannot off the cuff remember brand names. I am going to really say you want to take this much more seriously than you probably are as you're snickering as I talk about it. Most people who haven't done a marathon haven't run into this to the extent that marathoners do, or if you do a century on a bike, bikers often bleed, okay? So, the not bleeding thing is about your shirting as well. That a lot of times I will wear shirt sleeves if I'm chafing in the arms. So I'll wear a t-shirt to stop myself from chafing. In hot weather, I prefer a singlet. What do the rest of you call them? Tank tops. A loose tank top. But in running, it's usually called a singlet. And it's basically a sleeveless top with a scoop neck and a scoop back. It's meant to be as little cloth as you can put on yourself. Now, why would you do that? Well, I'm not comfortable running with my tummy showing. I just don't like to do it. My tummy looks great. I don't have stretch marks. I got off lucky on that one. And I'm fairly trim. Thank you, keto diet and a lifetime of exercise. And also, by the way, this is why my thighs don't rub together. That was keto. They used to. Keto. All I can tell you, keto. I don't get arm chafing from my singlets. You know how that happened? Yeah, keto. Okay? I know keto doesn't work for everybody, but you want to know why I don't get these things? That's why I don't get these things. But your shirting plays a big part in that. One of the things people don't see coming is cotton t-shirts will result in chafing. People think, oh, cotton, it breathes. Yeah, it breathes until you're sweating really, really hard, and then you've got a soggy, wet washcloth on you that's flopping back and forth with salt-infused sweat in it, okay? So you want to think about the issue of shirting. If you're going out for a long run, you might do better to carry a little bit of some kind of lube or sports gel in your fanny pack or whatever you carry your stuff in when you run. I have a water backpack, a hydration backpack as well, and that has a pocket for things. So sometimes I'm wearing a fanny pack. On a longer run or a hotter run, I'm usually wearing the lightweight Camelback water backpack, which I'll come back to in a later episode, okay? But you want to think about your shirting as well based on what you're wearing to carry your stuff. If I'm wearing a backpack to carry my goods, usually I'm going to be in a t-shirt because the straps of the backpack may cause chafing with a singlet, or the backpack itself may rub. And this is an individual thing. If you have a backpack you run with or you bike with, try different shirts under it. Try singlets, try t-shirts, try long and short sleeve. The other thing is a lot of sportswear fabric is made to be wicking. Well, that stuff may work great when you're not wearing a backpack. When you're wearing a backpack, what you might get is a soggy mass because it can't wick well because it's got you on one side and the backpack on the other. So the moral of this story is you have to experiment with your shirts, and people really don't give this a lot of credence. Here's the other moral of the story. You got to think about sunburn. This is one of the most common mistakes you see in a race, is people come back from a half-hour 5K and they're burnt to a crisp because they were like, well, the sun's not that intense. I'm not going to be out there that long. You really have to take sunlight seriously. You really have to take slathering yourself with a good SP whatever. I think they say that up to about 25 or 30 is effective. SPF 50 is a little bit of overkill. Doesn't actually do anything more than an SPF 30. But at any rate, you got to get serious about this. I cannot tell you how many times I've watched people at the finish line moan and whine because they're in pain, and they should be, because they didn't do anything about the suntan. The other thing is it happens on a cloudy day. Okay, and when you shirt up, you've got to think about that too. That I will wear technical shirts with long sleeves on a long race as long as I believe they breathe well, because I find that more comfortable than covering myself with suntan lotion goo. And I'm not sure about all the chemicals in that either, to be completely honest. I'd rather wear a shirt. So you want to look at that. Again, if you're a swimmer, I have to say the surfing community has really solved this in some clever ways, like rash shirts. And when I do any kind of swimming, serious swimming, where I want to do some distance and get a workout in, I'm long past the bikini stage. I now wear long sleeve rash shirts if I'm in the ocean. And if I'm in a pool, I tend to wear, tank top type rash shirts or t-shirt type rash shirts. The difference being they are a little closer cut than a normal cotton shirt, and they're made of the waterproof type fabrics, like bathing suit type fabrics. But you definitely want to think about your shirting. The other thing is, girls, you got to think about it lined up with your sports bra. That when I wear the bras I was telling you about last week, the tight-fitting, no longer made Roadrunner sports bras that have so much compression in the chest and down the abdomen, I only wear a singlet over those babies. Wearing anything else over it is a kiss of doom. They wick, but if you don't have a loose flowing shirt over it, you're just going to be trapping the salt against your skin and sweating like a horse. The other thing I should say is those shirts are made of breathable fabric. So the bras are made of breathable fabric. So they're perfectly comfortable, but you don't want to put a close-fitting shirt on top of them, and you do want to think about chafing, and you want to think about sunburn. So that's the skinny on shirting. Now the real question is, well, that's all nice. What about the winter? Believe it or not, winter is easier than summer for me when it comes to exercise shirting. In the winter, I layer, and I have loose-fitting turtleneck type sports fabric that is wicking fabric shirts that I got years ago from Roadrunner and several other sources. They have to be loose-fitting because, again, I'll have a layer of jog bra under them. Oh, by the way, if you get any kind of jog bra, you do have to deal with the reality. They will roll up, some of them, underneath. They'll roll up as high as they can go before they hit the obstacles, both of them. And so, again, if you don't want to show your tummy, or if you're showing your tummy, you got to be prepared for a certain amount of underlayer roll-up, whether it's a jog bra or a shirt that's fitted tightly, okay? So your shirting wants to account for that too. And in the winter, that's still true. In the winter, I will wear multiple layers. I prefer them to have long, loose arms, and I will take them off and tie those around my waist and keep running. And again, in the winter, with your shirting, you have to think about, are you carrying anything on your back or a fanny pack? Your shirting's got to be comfortable over that. Anything else more than that? Not really. I think I can move up to the arm gear and the neck gear comfortably. Okay. Also, I'm always talking about Roadrunner Sports. That link is in the show notes. They have a great online store. On to the fluffy books. I want to point out, I was listening to the two Knit Lit chicks. I'm a fan. I've been a fan since they started. And I have to tell you, one of the reasons I'm doing fluffy books is they're way smarter than I am. I enjoy listening to them. They talk about intelligent books, serious books. I was listening to a little Posey talk about political books this week. I mean, they're so good. If you want to hear smart book reviews, you want to go over to Two Knit Lit Chicks. And they're a podcast, and they're sensational. And they've been going slightly less time than I've been going. They've been going a real long time now. in other words. And they're just fantastic, and they're still going, and I just adore them. So hats off to Nitty Barb and A Little Posy. That's where you get your smart book reading. Me, welcome to junk. I'm still tooling around in Zen and the Art of Writing. I haven't read any of it this week, but I'm keeping it on my list because every now and then when I feel disenchanted with my own creativity, I go read Bradbury. And that's a great Bradbury to read. In the meantime, I finished The Well of Lost Plots and moved on to its sequel, Something Rotten. These are both by Jasper Fforde. The links are in the show notes. Something Rotten, wow, is it fun. And it's really the tying up of most of the loose ends of the previous books. So if your heart is broken over some of the things that happened in Well of Lost Plots and its predecessors, you're going to enjoy Something Rotten. The sense of humor in it is just wonderful, as Fforde always is. And I'm particularly enjoying this time around, because I think this is the second time I've read it, Thursday Next Mother, Wednesday. Wednesday is the typical British matriarch. And when I say that, I should specify, in the 80s, this was considered the typical, I don't know if it actually is, this really, more specifically, she's the middle class to upper middle class, white, Western England matriarch, or Southwest England matriarch. And Fforde writes it to a T. He knows everything that is funny about that character type, and everything that is annoying, and everything that is wonderful as well. And I'm deeply enjoying her character. She reminds me of several people I knew when I lived in Scotland. And I can't recommend Jasper Fforde enough. Fforde is F-F-O-R-D-E. Yes, the Welsh spelling. And he has a great sense of humor about Wales in these books, I must say. All right, I'm also plowing through What the Devil Knows in the Sebastian Sincere series by C.S. Harris, spelled exactly the way you think. Plowing is not the book's fault. I just have had so many other things to do, and I keep getting distracted by spinning and listening to Jasper Fforde books that I haven't been giving Sebastian Sincere and Hero Sincere their due. What the Devil Knows, I've just gotten to the place where I'm suddenly pricking up my ears and going, oh yes, this is why I read this series. It's getting very, very interesting. And what this one is good on is it's getting more convoluted and political and interesting. If you like a lighter amount of politics, I don't like heavy-duty politics. I don't read the extremely political novels, Hunt for Red October, that sort of thing. But in your mysteries, if you like just a breath of politics, you're going to enjoy Sebastian Sincere. One of the things I like about it is I think one of the things we're achieving in our current times, and the author talks about this a little bit. Who talks about this better? The Lady Dalby series, which I've talked about previously. She's talking in her books about pandemics. She's really interested in current events. Harris is not so much dipping into it, but Harris is aware of the fact that politics have never been as clean as we pretend. So in the Sincere series, you get a lot of class politics and some race politics. And I've really been enjoying that. And one of the good sensibilities in the Sincere series is how much the politics of the wealthy are trickling down to affect every class, which I think is really relevant in post-Trump America, that we have pretended for many years that the wealthy are not driving the economy and directing it and controlling it to their own advantage, thereby destroying the middle class. C.S. Harris is really onto that one. And the Sebastian Sincere series, you kind of get both your cheap thrills. You get to pretend you're an aristocrat by reading the lives of the upper class, but these upper class people are curiously interested and supportive of the middle and lower classes, which I really doubt was happening that often, as this book would suggest. That, in other words, in the 19th century, and there was a concern for the poor. But if you want to know about this, you want to read Professor Diana Maltz's work. She was one of my colleagues at Stanford, and she has written brilliantly about the deserving poor, how Victorian society in England basically found a way to punish the poor while pretending to help them by identifying what was called the deserving poor. So if you didn't live up to my standards as a wealthy person with money to give, you could just go starve. you see elements of this in our current society when people talk about, for example, there's a poor person, she's got a good cell phone. Well, good cell phones actually can be the difference between life and death. That if you're poor and you're living in a dangerous neighborhood, that cell phone can save your life. So I actually wonder why Americans are so nasty about cell phones. A friend of mine who's Australian says, the Australian government wants everybody to have a good cell phone because they can use it to locate them in an emergency. And she was horrified when she came to America and saw how expensive cell phones and phone programs are. So again, that's the deserving poor. That's a kind of remnant still hanging out in our society. So when you read Sebastianson's here, the two main characters are just a little too good to be true in their social, political, and class enlightenment, and I'm enjoying that. Can I be honest? I'm enjoying that. And yes, I get the cheap gratification of still getting to pretend I'm in the upper class and I'm riding around in carriages. In the meantime, it's on to something I really like. I wanted to show you my scissor chatelaine. Chatelaines. It's a beautiful medieval leftover. It's basically a chain you hang from your neck or your belt. And you use it to hold those little household oddments that help you get through your day. In the Middle Ages, and then again in the Victorian Age in Western Europe, these things were used all the time. That the thrifty housewife, as Shakespeare calls her, would always have a chatelaine, would have something around her. She would have a belt, because most clothing of the middle class and below involved belts. And from her belt, she would hang something, rope, string, twine, whatever, yarn that was braided. And from that, she would have her household embroidery scissors. And she might have a small case with needles in it for quick repairs. And she might have a spool of thread threaded through the chain. So these could be quite elaborate. There's some beautiful examples of them in the Victorian Albert Museum from the Victorian age, and a few floating around the Regency age. And there's you have to really look, but they're around. They're medieval ones. And there's certainly a lot of carvings and engravings of older ones from the Renaissance and Middle Ages in Western Europe. I'm pretty sure most cultures have a variant of this, but since I'm raised in the Western European tradition, that's what I'm going on. Okay, and so I, to my delight, one day, zooming around, I can't remember where, I saw a scissor chatelaine for embroidery scissors, and I said, oh my goodness. I went on to Ravelry, and I have the link in the show notes. These go on and off Ravelry, but I got a kit. And the kit had a needle case with metal embroidery needles, bent tip, carpet needles that you can use for weaving in ends. And they had a few other tools in there. I don't use them that often, but then they had a chatelaine for the scissors. And they also, some of the kits have a tin to put everything in except the scissor chatelaine. I got this for the chatelaine, although I've used some of the other tools, and I'm loving it. I particularly like having my scissors around my neck when I'm winding off yarn and when I'm spinning, that if I feel the need to cut anything, I really, really enjoy having this scissor chatelaine. So there's my scissor chatelaine. These things aren't expensive. The whole kit goes for something like $20 to $25. And it's just one of those standby things. I'm looking at my chatelaine on my desk, that I use it so often. I keep it on my desk. Now, normally around the house, I have tins, Mentos tins, some decorative tins I bought from friends who sell such things. And in those tins, I'll tend to have tiny embroidery scissors or folding scissors and, the needles I use for weaving in ends and a measuring tape and all that sort of thing. Yeah, those are great. But rather than find one of those and peel it open with my fingernails, I just have this thing hanging around my neck a lot of the time if I'm expecting to cut. So when I get down to doing the Kitchener stitch on the toes of my socks, I'll be wearing my chatelaine. When I'm winding off yarn and I'm tying it into skeins, I'm going to have my chatelaine on. It's just a nice thing. You can see a picture of it. I look like the Jolly Green Giant in the picture. I'm just sort of scowling downwards. But there's a picture of the chatelaine in its case around my neck, and it's a metal chain, and I really quite like it. By the way, you can make these yourself. If you want a chatelaine, go buy some cheap metal chain at Joann's or Michael's, and as long as you have pliers that you make jewelry with that you do for beading or something, go buy some cheap metal chaining, get the end pieces so you can join it together. And, if you've got an embroidery case or a scissors case that has a loop in it or some kind of looping, you could whip one of these together pretty cheaply, but frankly, for $20 on Amazon, I thought this was a pretty good deal, and I've really quite enjoyed it. The blather, at last. I have so much to tell you. Oh my goodness, look how late I'm going. Junior got his vaccination. Okay, we were poised to strike. When we found out the 12 to 15-year-olds were about to get approved for Pfizer vaccines, we were poised. He got it the first day it was available in our area. And it was such a shame because so many people in this neighborhood now are no longer getting shots that we've got vaccine centers that have tons of doses and don't have enough people to use them. So literally, I called the vaccine center closest to us with Pfizer. They had 268 doses when I called them at 11 a.m. So we easily got him a place at 3:30. He went and he got a shot. Yay! God, it feels so normal all of a sudden around here. So he is going back for a second one on June 3rd, which means, yes, by June 17th, we're all in the safety zone here. What's really nice, though, is it's suddenly becoming reasonable not to always wear a mask. Now, I have feelings on the masking thing. I think the CDC's nuts. I think we should still be masked because masks are ways of protecting other people, including the idiots who are anti-vaxxers or anti-COVID vax. Sure, I think they're idiots. Do I think they deserve to die for their idiocy? No. So I really do think around people, you wear masks. But I feel much better when I go running to not have a mask, to just have my bandana around my neck, and if I get near people, I can pull it over my face. But I feel really good now about being out exercising without a mask over my face. One more thing. I don't think little kids deserve to get COVID. Do you? Then put your damn mask on. That there's a significant part of the American population that is not vaccinated, and that includes children under the age of 12. Actually, at this point, it includes a lot of kids under the age of 15, to be honest. So remember, not everybody's an anti-vax idiot. Some people are kids whose parents are anti-vax idiots. And some people are kids who are just too young. So keep the masks on, kids. We're not done yet, but it's looking better. In the meantime, there was bathtub paradise. If you look at the top of the notes, you'll see a picture. Remember I told you in something I really liked last time that I got all these bath goodies? Well, it was time to try them out. I was having a tough day, so I took a hot bath, and I wanted Epsom salts and all that, so I put one of the bath bombs in it from Nectar, and I like the bath bombs because they don't come in plastic. And yes, I still have the stuff that did come in plastic. I opened one of those to get a loofah, and I opened the other to use the whipped soap. I must say, liquidy soap like that makes a great lather on a loofah, and I exfoliated, and I could not believe how great I felt. So, just going to say, bathtub paradise. Well, I would recommend you go for stuff that doesn't come wrapped in plastics. Or better yet, you make your own stuff, because that's a lot of fun. It's a nice project for the kids, and there are recipes all over Pinterest to make bath bombs and other delights, bath salt mixes, whatever. I have to say, this is one of the easiest ways to really enjoy your life and to take care of yourself without blowing the family jewels, okay? Meanwhile, Eleanor. Now, I mentioned before, and I'll say it again, we're working on going down a list of more expensive things that we postponed because of the pandemic. This allowed us to do good things with our finances, including get out of debt, except for the mortgage, of course. So this has been a wonderful thing. So we finally started looking at what are the bigger projects. The first big projects were healthcare for everybody and necessary repairs. So on that list, we finally got my windshield repaired. We're buying my husband a whole set of tires because he needs them. This has only recently become apparent, I must be honest. And I took all the dogs, to get their vaccines. Then I moved on to Eleanor's nose because I was made aware by the collie people she may have lupus, that she's got this peeling nose that happens in collies and often indicates it. So this week we took her to the vet. It was an all-day thing. I took her and they wanted to biopsy her nose. Good vet, really liked her. And then I left. And I spent the day tooling around Lancaster, just really knitting my socks with the pretty sock pattern, as I mentioned, and the pretty destination yarn. And also went to Blaze Pizza, had a pizza, and came back, had a Starbucks, sat outside the vet's office, and knitted. Because I was perfectly happy, frankly, sitting in my car and enjoying my pretty knitting and playing Harry Potter Wizards Unite. We had an event on, and it turns out the vet's office was surprisingly good for doing things I needed to do in the Harry Potter game. And then I picked up poor Elle. So poor Eleanor has to take pills twice a day for nerve pain because it's in the black part of her nose and it's very sensitive. You would think. The first night she came home wearing the cone of shame, and it was heartrending. I didn't get any sleep. I really didn't. I got like 3 hours. But I felt so bad because she wanted to be near me because I'm the fixer of all things for the animals in our family. So she laid close to my bed and she came out with this moaning that I had never heard before from a dog. Boy, it was heartrending. And, she took the pain pill. She's really great on pills. I wrapped them in chicken. We had some leftover roast chicken. And she eats the whole pill, no hesitation, swallows it right down. And inhales the chicken with it, of course. So the next day, though, Tuesday morning, she was actually fine. I give her pills at 7, morning and night. And she was just great all day yesterday. She's acting very normal today, except it's itching her. She's trying to scratch her nose, which isn't easy with the cone of shame, fortunately. So we're on day 3 out of 14 that she's got to wear the cone and keep the stitches in. And she's doing just wonderfully. She's adapted beautifully. We don't let her drink outside. We have a water trough for the dogs. But I have a fear that if she gets the cone in the trough, she could actually get her face stuck in the water and drown herself. So she has to drink indoors with supervision from the big deep dog dish in the kitchen so I can watch her drink and we can hear her if she starts struggling or gets stuck in it. But she's managing that very well. So poor Elle, we're waiting on her nose to heal. And after that, we go to get her groomed because she's just starting to molt. And after that, we do the Minerva work. And I will tell you about that as it develops. In the meantime, Minerva gets the last word. I started working on a yak blend from Abstract Fibers. This is deep stash diving. This stuff is probably 6 or 7 years old. And so it's beautiful. It's in a color, I believe it's called raspberry, yes. And it is yak merino. It's so beautiful to spin. It spins like butter. I'm triple plying it when I finish it. I'm spinning it up on 3 different bobbins. And I plan to triple ply this. And yeah, this is going to be the luxury cowl of my life. I'm actually thinking about, do I have something silver? I might blend it with something silvery because it's just so pretty. And I think it would look so stunning against a nice solid silver. Anyway, so I shredded all that. I prepped it. I pre-drafted it because I wanted to divide it in thirds. And I put it on the floor in these beautiful long strands, and Minerva found it. So if you go to the show notes, you will find Minerva lying on my fiber. This is not the accident you might think. Sure, you're thinking she's lying on it because it's soft. No, she's lying on it because she's jealous. Because she knows when I spin, she's not getting attention. Minerva has developed this thing now that every day she's figured out. Most days I finish at 5 talking to patients. Then I do my notes and phone calls. At 5 o'clock on the dot, Minerva now jumps into my lap. She's figured it out. 5 o'clock should be her time. So I often have to do phone calls and notes with, 15 pounds of Minerva cuddled up in my lap. And sometimes when I finish, I will immediately spin for 10 minutes as a break. Guess who now lies on the fiber? So you can see a picture of Minerva lying on my floor next to the transformer for my e-wheel, cuddled up in the yak merino, that beautiful cherry red stuff shot through with black. So there you go. I think that's all there is to say. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for hanging in on such a long episode because frankly, it's been about 10 days since I last recorded, so I have a lot to say. It's been an absolute pleasure. Remember, yes, get your vaccine. Please be considerate of others when it comes to the issue of masking. Please think it through. In the meantime, get your vax, wear your mask, wash your hands, and most of all, please, let's take care of each other and stay safe. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.